Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show, everyone. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, hey, how you doing? Welcome into the program. Today on the show, we have computer and technology news for the hour. Tons to talk about, and unfortunately, a death to announce, which is, of course, as I'm sure you might have heard by airtime today, that the last remaining member of the Apollo 11 mission has unfortunately passed away today at the ripe old age of 90. So Michael Collins, if you're not familiar, he was the last surviving member, and yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit more here during the news segment. But everyone, on a cheery note, how you doing? I hope that you're doing well, and welcome into the Computer America Show. ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows. You can, of course, find it right here. And yeah, go to our website, follow the links to social media, check out the articles, reviews, show notes, all that kind of thing you can find at our website. So, with that being said, everyone, why don't we go ahead and just get started with computer and technology news. Once again, brought to you by Computer America. So, as I said at the top of the hour, our first story is going to be, of course, Michael Collins passes away at 90. Nice, long life, and I gotta say, very accomplished life, of course. They said that he died on Wednesday after a valiant battle with cancer. He spent his final days peacefully with family by his side. Collins had stayed in lunar orbit as his colleagues Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. Aldrin, 91, is now the only surviving member of the mission. So, yeah, it's getting really sparse, the number of people who have walked on the moon. And paying tribute to Collins, Aldrin wrote in a tweet, "Dear Mike, wherever you have been or will be, you will always have the fire to carry us definitely to new heights into the future. We will miss you. May you rest in peace." That is, again, a tribute to from Buzz Aldrin. Yeah, so in a statement, the Collins family said that Mike always faced the challenges of life with grace and humility and faced this, his final challenge, the same way. So, obviously, on July 16th, 2019, Collins visited Florida's Kennedy Space Center, the site where the mission had set off exactly 50 years earlier. And speaking at Launchpad 39A, where the crew's rocket began the historic mission, he described what it felt like during takeoff, saying that the shockwave from the rocket power hits you, your whole body is shaking. That gives you an entirely different concept of what power really means. And I can really imagine that, obviously a lot of, most of us have driven in cars, but let's be real here. A rocket is something totally different. You are the payload for this giant, massive missile that is heading to the moon. And somehow, some way, they pulled it off and were even able to make it back to Earth. Really astounding. Now, they said that, so there you go. And obviously, again, he was a gentleman who stayed in the lunar orbiter while the other two went down to the moon. But obviously, he had the very, very important responsibility to be able to land and, of course, dock back with the, the lunar capsule. So very important. And passing of a generation. We're going to see it day by day, definitely month by month, as these things, continue to happen. The people who defined the previous generation, unfortunately, are going to start passing away. So, on to happier news. Speaking of, how about this? Not passing away, but actually renewing itself in the coming year. I'm sure that a lot of people out there have been, a little concerned that CES might not make it back, because obviously they had the all digital event, and they had the physical event, and the physical event, the last one that happened was in 2020, the very early stages of 2020, and that was just before COVID hit. Now, obviously, 2021, you did not have the event. It was all virtual. It was a very different experience. But would the venue come back? Would the trade show be able to pick itself up and make it to a new event? And it looks like, everything is set to go. CES will return as an in-person event in 2022. So they said that tech event organizers are determined to revive in-person extravaganzas as the COVID-19 pandemic recedes, and that now includes the largest of them all. The Consumer Technology Association, the CTA, has announced plans to hold CES 2022 as a combination in-person and digital event in Las Vegas between January 5th and January 8th, with media preview days starting January 3rd. And yes, big name brands will be returning, including Amazon, Google, Intel, Samsung, and Sony are those who are expected to have a presence. Now, the digital anchor desk for CES 2021 will provide coverage for those staying at home. And yes, the CTA is aware of safety concerns, saying that it is reviewing safety guidelines from the CDC as well as state and regional officials. And it also expects to adapt CES to honor federal, local, and state laws. Good luck with that. I mean, the last time that CES was held, you had like 140,000 people all gathering in one city, in one location. It is not a social distance kind of thing. There will be people who will be in close proximity to one another, and, they're planning on putting this on, but let's face it, it's not going to be It is not going to be safe. Well, let's put it that way. I hope that everyone who goes has their COVID vaccine. And while many people will obviously receive that by January 2022, there's no guarantee enough of them will be vaccinated in time, especially outside of the countries like the US and the UK. And without clarity about vaccine requirements, testing, or capacity limits, it's not clear just how safe the gathering will be. CES 2020 had about 170,000. I recall 140, so 170. Many of them from abroad, and while we wouldn't expect as many guests in 2022, an outbreak at the event could have ramifications well beyond the US border. And, that's actually, kind of the funny thing. CES has been, targeted as a super spreader event for COVID before it was even on anyone's radar. Obviously, they had, I think, like 50 or so nationals from Wuhan there at the event, and many attendees reported COVID-like symptoms after attending CES 2020. So, to say that, you were going to have an event, yeah, that's one thing, but, having, a couple hundred people probably having COVID at CES caused enough of an issue. But now with COVID and the rates that we're seeing, I don't see how they could put this on without mandating that anyone who attends has a COVID vaccine. I really do feel like anything less is going to be very tricky to pull off. But yeah, we'll see what they do. And obviously, They're going to be limited capacity. I got to think that, for Computer America, because we love to attend as often as we can, I don't know if it's going to be safe enough to attend in the early stages of 2022. And if it is, it's going to be real close. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll let you know if Computer America plans to attend. Definitely keep an eye out for that. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on here. So CES 2022, for all intents and purposes, it's set to go on. I don't know how big of an event they're planning, but I'm hoping that they really scale it back because, in some cases, like your booth is 10 feet across, and to imagine that you have social distancing in a booth, I mean, it's just not going to happen. It is shoulder to shoulder in most venues. So there you have it. Okay, there's that one. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story. How about, and I always find these very interesting, where old video games that get scrapped for one reason or another find their way back into the mainstream. And, obviously for market viability, it's not really... The company that produces it has little to no incentive to actually release these games, because they've been developed for the Dreamcast, which is obviously not a current gen console. They're 20 years removed from when they were created, so they're definitely not up to spec. So, actually releasing them is not really something that you would, that these companies would even consider. But sometimes they make their way back out into the wild. And that's the situation you have here. Kyle Orland, Ars Technica, saying that Dreamcast Castlevania game was released 20 years after it was canceled. So back in 1999, journalists and industry insiders attending that year's E3 got to try an early demo version of Castlevania Resurrection for the Sega Dreamcast. And when the game was canceled in March of 2000, those lucky few became the only people outside of Konami to ever experience a Castlevania game on the Dreamcast. And today, well, looks like you can play it. There is a playable version of Resurrection, and the demo has been uploaded to the internet, saying that the long-lost demo comes to the wider world thanks to a French Dreamcast preservationist, Combi Lawrence, who has documented a number of unreleased Dreamcast prototypes on his website. Lawrence said that he first became aware of the working copy of the demo earlier this month through an acquaintance who had provided the first new video evidence of the demo in action. And shortly after, the seemingly one-of-a-kind demo was listed on eBay, with the owner promising to back the disc up and release the content at some point. That auction ended up bidding up to $20,000 for an old demo. It's not even a full-fledged video game. It is a demo of an unreleased game for a console that is not that popular. It's crazy. Fast forward to today, and Lauren has provided a full write-up and downloadable build of the demo thanks to the owner who placed his trust in me by sharing me with the files. And he mentions that the owner is adorable and passionate. There you go. Whatever that means. So, with that being said, they said that Resurrection was set to be the seventh name in the seventh name Castlevania title, and the third in 3D, following two awkward Nintendo 64 entries. The game, as envisioned, would have given players control of both Sonia, so the protagonist of the 1997 Game Boy Castlevania Legends, and another character from Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 that actually did not show up until 2014. So, yeah, spent about 15 years in the ice chest. So, with that being said, you can jump through very sparsely populated castle halls, and you have secondary weapons. Blocky polygonal enemies include floating specters, fire-spitting skulls, and a giant three-headed Hydra, and including Medusa. So with that being said, the game also reportedly plagued by strained relations between Japanese parent company and the new subsidiary Konami of America, which was heading up the first Castlevania game outside of Japan. They vaguely gestured toward some people within Konami who had their own agenda, seeding some negative impressions of the game early in its development. So, the subsidiary who was developing it fell out with the parent company who owned the rights. In any case, don't let Konami's decision to stop you from enjoying what remains of the title little over 2 decades later. So obviously, it's available in the original GD-ROM files, and of course, it can be burned onto a CDR and be playable like that. Still, again, I found this very fun because software in general, and we're kind of reaching that point, and there's a growing movement to preserve digital content, because digital is seen as very, not physical, and something that is, can forever be copied and pasted and saved in someone's hard drive, but the actual preservation of software and software development, video games, early video games, and things like that, in general, just is not that good. When a company is done developing something, they throw it in a closet. It kind of languishes somewhere, and much like this unreleased game that was just a demo, up until earlier this month, they thought no one even had access to this thing, that this thing was just a loss to time. And luckily enough, they were able to find and sell and preserve a working copy of at least this demo, which, again, may seem like a very small thing. One game for one franchise, for one demo during one event that wasn't even released. But hey, it's still worthy of being preserved. And there you go. And now it actually is. So that's perfect. And I actually find that to be a lot of fun. So with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on here to, speaking of being preserved, non-fungible tokens. They've come up on the show every once in a while, and it looks like we have a new story here about that. Check this one out. This is the girl behind the Disaster Girl meme. She's now 21 years old and far removed from her 4-year-old self, which was, if you've ever seen the meme, it's the little girl looking back with the burning house behind her. And she has sold an NFT claiming to be the original, kind of owner of the meme, or at least, saying that's her, saying that she is Disaster Girl. And she sold it for, with just minutes to go, the bid was set at about $25,000. And then after 15 minutes, every time someone bid, it would be extended by another 15 minutes, and on and on and on it went until you had more than $50,000. Zoe Roth was able to get that. So they're saying that the now viral meme was first taken in January 2005. Zoe, her parents, and her brother lived 2 blocks away from a fire station, where they lived. Sirens were the soundtrack of her childhood. One day the noise was especially close. Her mother stepped outside and saw billowing smoke. The fire department was putting out a controlled fire purposely set on a nearby piece of property to clear land. So they're saying that for her father, the burning house was the perfect background to test his new camera, and they said that him, an amateur photographer, often uploaded his work to Flickr. 3 years later, Dave won JPEG Magazine's Emotion Capture contest. The magazine arrived in the mail. Zoe, then in 2nd grade, flipped through it, and with no idea of her dad's latest victory. And she turned the page, saw her own face, and said, "Did you know about this? Am I famous now?" And, with the house burning in the background, her in the foreground, they said that Zoe and her family don't know when the photo was first shared. The photo was uploaded to the website as part of the prize, and suddenly the image was everywhere. And, so there you go. Obviously, the meme would, continue to evolve, over the next, 13 years now. And yeah, she was able to turn it into, in February, Zoe received an email that encouraged her to sell the meme as a non-fungible token with potential profit of 6 figures. Zoe and Dave Roth thought it sounded suspicious. So obviously an NFT was a way to kind of put a little marker because they own the original photograph, and that was, her and her dad's photo. They're able to turn that into a non-fungible token, something that is committed to a blockchain and said, this is the original. You can own it, you can buy it. It is yours. You own the original. So they've thought about it for a few weeks. They sought advice from from other meme celebrities. And Zoe said they even hopped on a Zoom call and made tentative plans for getting drinks together if they ever found themselves in the same city. So, calling other meme famous people to see what's up. Finally, they listed the token. It was open for a 24-hour auction with the countdown set to start when someone placed the first bid. So the team had to consider the audience, which time zone would a buyer be in, when is the optimal time to start the auction. And they said that for the last hour of the auction, while Zoe was pacing around the restaurant where she worked to distract herself from the life-altering scene playing out on her phone, Dave brought his computer outside and sat on the porch swing. And yeah, the account officially purchased the token for 180 Ether, worth about $430,000. That's crazy. So obviously, that's about the end of it. Now, whoever purchased this thing is now the proud owner of a non-fungible token, an official paper trail saying that he now owns the original photograph that became an online sensation for over a decade. And is that worth $430,000? Who's to say? This person certainly thinks so, but yeah, you can only sell it once, and there you go. So obviously they say that this does not meet some of the other NFTs that we've talked about on the show before. One that was like 2.9 million for the first tweet sent out by the founder of Twitter. There was also the Beeple's collage, which sold for about $69 million, which again was a non-fungible token as well. That's right, a piece of digital art selling for $69 million. I completely understand NFTs. I get why they exist, how they exist. I get it. I don't value them to the point at which some of these are selling. You can have other NFTs. There are marketplaces where you can purchase your own NFT for, $10, $15, $20. Obviously, they aren't, they're new creations and new art pieces. But, NFTs are a very common and easily accessible kind of form of currency or, kind of asset. But some of these that sell for 6+ figures are just crazy. Internet culture has kind of skewed things. Obviously when, a Picasso sells, there's only so many paintings by original Picasso. There's only so many, of this, that, or the other. But then at the same time, internet culture that I was raised on and a lot of people were raised on is that, things are transient. That you can change things, copy, paste, share them infinitely. You can have, this particular meme, you can have infinite versions of this meme. But to have the original, the singular one, and have that be, worth $400,000, maybe. Just maybe. Not me, but maybe it's worth just that. So there you go. Now as a proud new owner. Okay, so that's story number, what are we up to? 4? Story number 5. Let's talk about, Let's talk about this one. This one was on my radar yesterday. Didn't have enough time to do it. But this comes to us from Motherboard and is talking about GPS spoofing, which, in its own wouldn't be too bad, but it's used in combination with delivery and food apps, saying that delivery drivers are using gray market apps to make their jobs suck less. And this is, again, from Motherboard, from Michelle Ura, saying that delivery drivers are using gray market apps to make their jobs suck less. In Indonesia, unofficial apps let delivery drivers filter orders and spoof their GPS location to beat the algorithms at their own game. Which, part of me is like, it's their app, their marketplace, their system to kind of cheat the system. I mean, yeah, workers' rights, and they should be paid more and all that good stuff. But man, it's I can't help but think that it's going to make the end consumer, the person who is paying, the real person who pays the price is the person who is ordering the food or ordering the groceries. It's the consumer is going to be the one who's left out to dry here. Now, they said, and the article is decently long, as Motherboard is, kind of as they're known to do, but they're saying that the McDonald's on Jakarta's crowded main thoroughfare is a magnet for food delivery orders. On any given day, a dozen or so app-based delivery drivers wait in the parking lot. Inch by inch, they try to move as close as they can to the center of the lot, desperate to have their matching algorithm recognize their proximity and assign them an order. So obviously, being able to say that I am the closest to it, maybe the algorithm will prioritize them. So, but even more drivers are there virtually using GPS spoofing apps to position themselves right in the center of the McDonald's lot where they physically wait under nearby shelters. Using these unofficial apps, known locally as something else, drivers can set their GPS pins at the optimal location they would have that they would like orders from without having to physically drive there. In Jakarta, these kinds of unauthorized apps are a common tool of the trade among app drivers working for a food delivery service. And by the way, it's one of these super apps. If you haven't heard about super apps, that's something I should probably cover on the show. Maybe tomorrow I'll actually do it because it's actually a fun topic. Think of these super apps are getting super popular in Asian countries, in China, in Indonesia, in a lot of South Korea, places like these. Think of it like a Walmart of the app ecosystem, where you can accept and receive payments, you can order rides, you can order food, you can send money, receive money to family and friends, you can message people, of course, you can get customers for your business, you can start a business, you can sell exclusively through these apps. Everything is handled through a singular app. It is it is really impressive what these things can do, and I'm always questioning if these apps are going to make headway into U.S. markets. Is this something that people in the U.S. would be interested in having as well? Now, they're saying that though Indonesia is by far the biggest market, they operate in more than 200 cities in Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, and Thailand. Saying that, quote, these are people in need who have to hold on to their jobs on difficult streets. They're not doing this for fun because there is no other option. Very competitive. Obviously, people are looking to outcompete one another. It's just the competitiveness of the field. So, with that being said, over the past 6 years, a burgeoning underground market for unauthorized third-party apps has emerged. And they mentioned that, it's named after a childlike spirit in Indonesian folklore that helps his human master earn money by stealing. Each app responds to a specific need that a driver needs to make their jobs less miserable. Saying that, for instance, when older drivers complained that they could not read important details of a matched order because the text was too small, a homebrewed application came onto the market which magnified the destination, fare, and distance of each order offered. The feature eventually spun out into apps that allowed automatic bidding. Each order would be accepted as it was offered, removing the hassle of looking at the phone. And they also mentioned to give drivers more control over the orders offered and to avoid rejection-associated penalties, some apps allow drivers to set filters for order characteristics. So, and that includes setting the maximum distance and minimum pay, for example. Although that seems, pretty reasonable that should be in the app already. Being able to accept a minimum level of pay and not having to go too far to receive the money. Seems pretty obvious. The GPS spoofing apps remain the most popular types of apps, with some having 500,000 downloads in the Google Play App Store. So, with that being said, let's see. So they have one driver here mentioning that we don't have to go to the office, only for a small fee. We get help wherever. And they mentioned even though it's illegal, the IT of the street is very agile and smart. It makes our lives easier. Let's see. So extensive manuals are shared on how to prepare an Android phone for the unofficial apps. Instructions include how to gain root access to phones, clearing the device's cache, and downloading a host of other applications which prevent detection by Gojek's system. If help is needed with any of these technical requirements, drivers can ask other technologically savvy drivers or get support from the developer. So banding together and helping their own method. Very, very interesting. It's good and bad at the same time. I mean, as long as it helps the individual, then, who's to say if it's really good or bad? But I don't know. It's, I don't know. So they mentioned spending hours sitting in a stationary bike in parking lot is also uncomfortable. They mentioned that, the climate can be rainy and it's very hot, humid, and therefore many drivers argue that allowing them to bid for orders without needing to be in the precise location helps everyone. You can see in the very first part of the article where they mention a McDonald's parking lot and everyone getting inching closer because, it's not a general location, but rather a pin, where if you are closest to this pin, this beacon, you are the closest and will get priority to these orders that are coming in for McDonald's. When there's 50 people waiting in the near vicinity, you got to get as close to that pin, or, hey, spoof as close to the pin as you possibly can. So with that being said, helpful as they may be, the unauthorized apps open up drivers to a host of risk. For one, they're saying that there is no way for drivers to verify whether the service they will pay for will actually work. And there's no telling when Gojek will ban the use of the app that they purchased. They said that they can earn millions of dollars, which can be tens of thousands of dollars. It is in their interest to hype up their products and charge high membership fees because if you can charge $10 for this app, but you promise to get a lot more business and be a lot more capable of earning a living, that's good. But at the same time, it could be banned immediately, and then the developer just walks away from it with all the money that they've gotten, and the App Store is not exactly going to reimburse you for downloading an unvetted app. So, Gojek has implemented a zero-tolerance policy in GPS spoofing apps, and the company even runs campaigns to discourage drivers from using them. Drivers have been warned that anyone detected to be using these apps will be suspended permanently, and the security system has also improved over time, finding new ways to detect the use of unauthorized apps in rooted phones. So, will it work? I mean, this is like most other things in technology. It's a cat and mouse game, the attackers are always going to have a step up because the defenders are going to have to be very reactive. They can be as proactive as they want to, but once the algorithm's out there, it's then up to the attackers to be able to defeat it. And the company offering the service is always going to be on the back foot compared to the people who are trying to cheat the service. So they mentioned that the company has benefited by adopting some of the features originally created by unauthorized apps. For instance, the automatic bidding app drivers have developed was introduced into the official app through a new feature called Auto Bid. They also briefly introduced the ability for drivers to filter orders, but according to drivers, removed the feature when too many drivers started filtering for specific types of orders. While Gojek adopting driver-developed app feature shows its responsiveness, it also comes with the fear that drivers losing agency over how and how long they can use the features. This happens in so many software programs. I mean, really, it's the basis of open software. But there's also, I of course come from a gaming background, so things like World of Warcraft, and it's always a question of the add-on that you are installing to provide a service or fill some kind of quality of life benefit to playing the video game. Sometimes it can be overbearing, and they can be outright banned because they are game-breaking and just too, overpowered. They're just too good. And then others are later incorporated into the service. I mean, this is also something that, from video games, it's one thing. But to another, like Apple, they've been, sued for millions of dollars. And in a lot of cases, they kind of just eat the cost and go, yeah, we did. When there are apps on the App Store that are insanely popular, and then Apple comes out, like let's say sleep monitoring apps. They became very popular a couple of years ago. And Apple came out with their own sleep monitoring system baked into the iOS operating system. And it's like there were so many apps that were in that field, and now they have to compete with something that is by default in the operating system that they are now using. Apple has to kind of walk on eggshells, but then again, they kind of don't because they have $500 billion in cash. Because whatever becomes popular, they can look at the demographics, they can look at their own downloads and the metrics for the App Store and say, people are very keen on getting sleep monitoring apps. They're very keen on getting, payment apps. So Apple Pay came out. They're very keen on getting, kind of grocery delivery. Anytime they need any kind of market analysis, they can look at their own operating system and go, we're going to adopt what is most popular. And yeah, it's something that, this particular system is doing, and other video games and operating systems and companies, hey, you just see what's in demand and you copy success. You copy what people are asking for. So I can see where they're going. And again, it's a very uniquely, it's a very unique issue to have, but yeah, it really comes down to these delivery drivers just needing that little bit of edge over everyone else. And so far, it sounds like, they aren't, the loss isn't for the consumer, but it might be for the, although actually at the same time, it does sound like the loss is for the consumer, when they introduced auto filtering of jobs and deliveries and things like that. Certain deliveries could not be filled, maybe because delivery drivers were more interested in staying local and they weren't willing to drive out 15-20 minutes because that would reduce the amount of pay that they get. Obviously, people would not be able to get their food, groceries, whatever. So it's one of those things that there's no clear answer. I don't think anyone is explicitly the good or bad guy in this, but I'm glad that Gojek is willing to adapt their application to make it easier for people to use. But I'm also, hey, you also have to be on the side of the people who are working in this gig economy, and they're finding ways to beat the algorithm. So who's going to win? Who's to say? Who is to say? So there's that story. And again, we'll have links to all these in the show notes over at computeramerica.com. Let's go ahead and continue on here. I think we're going to talk about this one because we talked about this a couple of months ago when contact tracing became, kind of a big thing. And Google had their own system, and they promised it was completely private. And, they tried. There was a lot of questioning how they're going to do this, how they were going to keep it anonymous. And as far as I know, they did a pretty good job, assigning everyone essentially tokens, and they would alert people if this token, came in contact with another token that had proven to be positive for COVID. And, there were never any names associated with these tokens. But my concern back then, and I would imagine this is what got them in trouble, you can disassociate names and, kind of user profiles from these tokens, but let's face it, there's only going to be one token that lives in your house. There's only going to be one token that can be tracked to your place of work, your usual hangouts, your house, your family members. As much as you want to rip the name off, there's a lot more to you than is just your name. So let's see what happens. Since then, millions of people have downloaded contact tracing apps developed through Apple and Google's framework. That's right, they worked together on that one. And they mentioned that 2 million people downloaded the Virginia's Department of Health. And let's see, the UK National Health Services has 16 million users. Canada's Digital Service COVID Alert app has 6 million downloads. And again, another 2 million. So you're looking at least about 25 million just from those 3 apps alone. They said that, you had assurances from Apple and Google. You had assurances from California governor that everything was 100% private and secure. But they're saying that the Markup has learned that not only does the Android version of the contact tracing tool contain a privacy flaw, which, surprise, surprise, when you have to develop an app on the fly and make it work and make it very accessible, you're going to have some privacy concerns. They're saying that, but when researchers from the privacy analysis firm AppSensus alerted Google to the problem back in February, Google failed to change it. And they said that AppSensus was testing the system as part of a contract by the Department of Homeland Security, and the company found no similar issues with the iPhone version of the framework. So, Android exclusively, but contact tracing. It can be a very private thing because it tracks everywhere you've been, everyone you've associated with, and everywhere that you've come in contact with anything, place of business, person, otherwise. It's a lot of information. Now, they're saying that, we were notified of an issue where the Bluetooth identifiers were temporarily accessible to specific system-level applications for debugging purposes, and we immediately started rolling out a fix to address this. This is what a Google spokesperson mentioned. Now, they're saying that the fix is a one-line thing where you remove a line that logs sensitive information to the system log. It doesn't impact the program. It doesn't change how it works. So they're saying it's a very simple fix, and it's amazing that it took them so long to actually rectify it. Let's see. So they said that Google had repeatedly dismissed the firm's concerns about the bug until the Markup contacted Google for comment on the issue late last week, saying that asked if the vulnerability had been eliminated. They said that they had rolled out an update to Android devices, began several weeks ago, and will complete in the coming days, essentially saying, we've been working on this for a while. But again, it's a singular one-line deletion of code. So it sounds like they were trying to buy some time and save some face. Now, with that being said, the signal that a phone, I think this article goes into kind of how it works. The signals are changed every 15 minutes to make it harder to identify someone, and are created from a key that changes every 24 hours. So essentially, they're making it really complicated for individuals or people to track who is what key and where. Where was it generated, from what code was it generated, from what device was it generated, so on and so forth, until, you're not going to know who is who and who is, kind of where anyone was, but the system would know and be able to immediately alert people who had come in contact with someone. But being able to send out those kind kind of those pings and say, this is the device that connected to this device due to Bluetooth, because it used Bluetooth to kind of detect if other devices were nearby. Well, it left a trace of what devices connected to your Bluetooth. And from there, if you were able to gain access to that kind of information, you could then reverse engineer it and be able to track it down and see who was interacting with what other devices. So with that being said, reading through the article here goes on for a little bit, but I think that we're going to wrap it up there. It mentions trying to find the right person to contact about the security update, the security flaw. And also that it wasn't enough to warrant a payout, and that the security team would decide whether they want to make a change or not. And they have not heard from the company since. So again, they found a very obvious flaw in the contact tracing app that Google and Apple provided for the Android version of the phone. Google has since fixed it and patched it, did not provide a payout for these individuals, and overall, just kind of acted slowly on fixing this. It's a pretty common story. So there you go. Okay, plenty of time. Let's talk about. It wouldn't be a good show without a little bit of mention of China. China is one of those topics that, just never a dull moment. And that includes this story from The Guardian saying that China orders companies to step up monitoring of foreigners in anti-spying push, which sounds almost like an Onion article. Hey, companies, spy on other people so we know if they're spying on us, and really stick it to them. So state security will provide guidance to organizations deemed to have anti-espionage responsibility as hostilities with Western governments deepen. So this is a big rift that has been brewing for quite a while. And whenever I talk about China, there are certain things that are just, non-negotiable. China has their own internet. They have their own services that are accessible only from China. And by and large, China does not really need the world when it comes to the internet. They have their own system in place. They have their own firewall. They have their own services. They have, some of those services like TikTok and Alibaba have been able to make it past China. But with an economy of 1.3 billion people, and just so much money being able to be invested and moved around in there, China could be not only an economy unto itself, but a network unto itself. So when China starts to, kind of spread its corporations outward, and obviously Western countries want to be able to tap into that market as well. So Facebook and Twitter and Google have all tried to play nice with the Chinese government and appease them so that they could gain access to that market, which is very difficult to do. Not only from, kind of like a Western ideological standpoint, but China's very secretive. Not secretive, very controlling about what companies operate within their borders. The same goes the other way, where China is also very controlling of the corporations that operate outside of their borders. And so you get situations like this. They're saying that Chinese social groups, enterprises, and public entities will have increased responsibility to combat foreign espionage under new regulations issued by the company's Ministry of State Security, saying that the regulations, which were released and took effect on Monday, come amid deepening hostilities between China and Western governments. And according to state media, the state security will work with other government departments to adjust the list of groups susceptible to foreign espionage and develop measures to safeguard against it, including the Chinese Communist Party and state organs, social groups, enterprises, and public institutions. Essentially, everyone is being put on high alert that all their data is furthermore going to be scrutinized by the central government of China. So they said that the new regulation places emphasis on companies and institutions taking precautionary measures against foreign espionage. And they said that key fields would include companies working in national defense, diplomacy, economy, finance, and tech. So they also cited an unnamed official saying that the new national regulations were in response to intensified infiltration into China by overseas spy agencies and hostile forces. I have no doubt. I'm not saying that China is the only one who spies and they only spy on the West and the West is just this innocent little lamb. No. Every country at this point has realized, thanks to China, the US, Russia, all these different organizations, you could even throw North Korea and Israel in there if you'd like as well, that the amount of money that you spend putting together a task force to monitor data, collect data, infiltrate networks, get where you're not supposed to be, and you never have to leave the safety of your own country is immense. Russia, comes to mind immediately with the amount of disruption they're able to do on social media, with the amount of espionage they're able to kind of accomplish through malware, spyware, things like that. And then, take North Korea, the amount of money that they're able to extract through ransomware. It's a very common thing. And so for China to say, keep an eye out for foreign spies, don't get me wrong. Definitely happening. Definitely 100% happening. For them to act like, that they don't do it and it's just something that they need to, that they need to watch out for, a little disingenuous. They mentioned that it comes amid public campaigns to watch out for foreign spies, which state media has warned could be, quotes, an intimate lover or an online friend with the same interest. So be suspicious of friends, family, loved one, anyone who is not Chinese. Be suspicious. They said that cases of Chinese people working in various industries who were wooed by money or intimidated to engage in espionage activities and became pawns of foreign spy intelligence agencies are numerous. Man, those dang sultry Western powers. Oof. So mean. Chinese authorities have arrested a number of foreigners on national security or espionage charges in recent years, prompting condemnation from their governments and accusations the detentions were instead instances of hostage diplomacy. Which obviously, if you have reporters, if you have, just general people that the government would then be forced to negotiate over, the release of, I can think of one in particular that, don't get me wrong, was probably called for, but it was like the daughter of Alibaba, I think, or something like that. It was some large Chinese corporation who was actually arrested in Vancouver, British Columbia, extradited to the U.S., and it was used because I think that Chinese corporation, along with HP, were sending printers and computers and other pieces of technology to, I want to say, Iran, to evade an embargo that and restrictions that the U.S. had placed on the country. So things like that happen on both sides of the spectrum, warranted or not. And China is just being very overt at this point that, hey, be suspicious of everyone. They also mentioned that Australian nationals, I'm not even going to try their names. So Australian nationals are also currently detained. They mentioned one was a writer and a blogger who was charged with endangering national security by joining or accepting a mission from an unidentified espionage organization, but has maintained he is innocent through more than 300 interrogations. It's pretty crazy. They also mentioned that a news anchor for the state broadcast CGTN has been detained for 8 months on suspicion of illegally providing state secrets to foreign forces. Yep, it's a pretty wacky way to operate things, and China is probably not the safest place to visit at the current moment. Political tensions are high, and I feel like these arrests are going to only continue. I guess it's like a sort of Cold War. So there you have it. I think the last thing we're going to do, and we're going to read this. We're going to read this together. This is from Signal to the government, the Central California Grand Jury, because Signal was asked to provide transcripts and information on users in a particular court case. And it looks like, well, Signal, known for its privacy, end-to-end encryption, and not collecting data on users, had this to say. And again, this is directly from Signal, signal.org. They're saying that it's the first half of 2021, nearly 5 years since the first half of 2016, but in many ways, not much has changed. The UK is still trying to figure out Brexit, another Justin Bieber song just hit the #1 on the charts, and Signal still doesn't really know anything about you. So when we received the subpoena from the United States Attorney's Office in the Central District of California, it felt like 2016 all over again. Nostalgia can be great, and just like the last time we got in touch with the ACLU to work with them on our response, because everything in Signal is end-to-end encrypted by default, the broad set of personal information that is typically easy to retrieve in other apps simply doesn't exist on Signal's servers. The subpoena requested a wide variety of information that fell into this non-existent category, including addresses of the users, their correspondence, and the names associated with each account. You can see that, something like Facebook or Apple or Twitter or anything like that, they'd be able to provide this information very easily. But for Signal, they're giving a very, I gotta say, cheeky and kind flip off. So they said that just like last time, we couldn't provide any of that. It's impossible to turn over data that we never had access to in the first place. They mentioned that Signal does not have access to your messages, your chat list, your groups, your contacts, your stickers, your profile name or avatar, or even the GIFs you search for. And yes, I say GIFs instead of GIFs. Sue me. And as a result, our response to the subpoena will look familiar in the same set of account and subscriber information we provided in 2016, Unix timestamps for when each account was created, and the date each account last connected to the Signal service. That's it. So they really don't collect any kind of third-party or behind-the-scenes information of these accounts other than when it was created, whatever information the user submitted, and the last time it was connected to the server. And they said that's it. So they also said that, speaking of good lawyers, we'd like to thank the ACLU for their assistance, particularly our counsel for this response. And we'd also like to thank everyone who uses Signal. Our commitment to you remains unchanged. We'll keep working with effective and talented organizations to respond to future government requests, and we'll keep publishing our responses here. So there you have it. And they even published the letters that the United States Department of Justice had sent them, and then, of course, the response to it as well. Each one being 13 pages, 4 pages. I'm going to say overall, very good response from Signal. It couldn't have gone better if they had tried. So there you have it. So some of the stories that we're not going to be able to get to include, and honestly, this one's pretty quick, Sony PlayStation 5 has already sold 7.8 million PlayStation 5s, and 3.3 million of those have been since January. COVID, lockdown, social isolation, it has been a wild ride for consoles, and I'm sure that number is only capped out because they can't make that many more. There's been a huge strain on the supply of chips, and, I'm sure that if they could make more PlayStation 5s, they would have sold more PlayStation 5s. But it's really, really impressive. They also mentioned that the company reported around 109 million PlayStation Network users in the last 3 months. And while game sales were down compared to the holiday quarter, obviously, a greater volume of them were downloaded digitally. Also, obviously. So there you go. PlayStation, Sony doing very, very well in their last earnings report. Let's see. We have others, including the FTC, and this one just blows my mind. The FTC warns it could crack down on biased AI. Don't get me wrong. AI can be biased and has been proven to be biased many, many times. But for the Federal Trade Commission to say, we're going to crack down on it, that seems really, really difficult to do because, AIs are kind of developed in a black box. It's a very secretive method to which they create these things and train these things, and really company secrets. They have no interest in actually sharing how AI are developed, and the FTC says that they want to crack down on biased AI. To be able to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, to be able to look at the code behind it and the data that it was trained from, as a government organization, they're probably privy to this more than other organizations, but good luck. That seems like such a tall order and, really, really impossible. So everyone, the music in the background means that we are done. Thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America. And hey, be sure to tune in tomorrow. I think we're going to do a segment on super apps and, the state of those and if they could actually make it here to the US. And after that, on Friday, we will have the one, the only Pop Zara Nathan Evans. Until then, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.